Johnson, who is virtual with us this evening. Madison?
All right, thank you very much. So here's the school board report, and we'll start with Murray tonight. So, after perfecting their strategies, teachers have collaborated in academic interventions to help expand the process. Only receiving support in math and English, students can now receive science and history classes. This is a timely addition, since school is moving into the home stretch as the fourth quarter begins on Monday. The ASB class continues its hard work to generate excitement by recognizing students and engaging in classes.
Madison, could you hear us? You're coming in and out.
Lastly, the cross-country team is filled out nicely, and James Monroe has had more involvement than ever before. Go Tigers. All right. Are you guys able to still hear me?
We can hear you now, but we lost you for a while. You there? Dear Madison, are you there? Well, I think what we'll do is... Tim, would you like to read it?
I won't be as good as Madison, but I can give my college try. Okay. Next we'll go to Monroe. ASB has kept the spirit going with Pet Day and Jock versus Nerd Day and Cameo Day, Spirit Days, and the fun of Friday Fun Days. Students can join ASB students and counselors during lunch on Friday for fun, music, and games. 42 students were nominated for Student of the Month in February. Congratulations. Murray Mathletes, Parker Anderson, and Aman Ahmad, who placed in the top 13 in the county math counts competition, competed in the advanced competition to determine the top 5 to compete at the state level and place 7th and 11th. Congratulations. Murray will celebrate music in our schools in March in 2 virtual concerts. Concert orchestra will perform a concert on March 10th at 7 p.m., and our bands will perform a concert on March 17th at 7 p.m. The Pbis Student Rewards Program awarded 281 prizes this month, an increase of 140 prizes since last month. Over 550 students have earned enough points to get a prize. Teachers have given out 80,704 points. Sixth grade students have earned 35,575. Seventh grade students 23,208, and 8th grade students 19,921, an increase of 34,600. Our teachers are earning points as well to redeem teacher rewards. Keep up the good work, Mustangs. Now to Mesquite. It's hard to believe we are already coming to the end of the third quarter. Mesquite has welcomed many new students this past month and added 2 graduates to our list, making our total 7 this year so far. Representatives from Syracuse Community College gave a virtual presentation to our upperclassmen this week. They visit our junior and senior English classes to share the local educational opportunities available to our students. ASB students are in full swing creating the 2021 yearbook and planning our annual spring fling. This event will look different this year. They will be hosting a virtual trivia games and raffles for prizes on Friday, March 26th. Most importantly, we are gearing up for our midterm WASC accreditation visit this month. The visiting team will be with us virtually on Monday, March 15th. They will meet our teachers, staff, and students to receive feedback and discuss our action plan. And finally, Burroughs High School. Burroughs officially finished the WASC accreditation process. This process started in fall of 2018 with focus groups, home groups, and staff meetings. But thanks to the dedication of the WASC coordinators, Mrs. Susie Burgess and Mrs. Carolyn Wilson and the administration, the Burroughs report was submitted. The WASC committee visited the different groups from around Burroughs on Monday through Wednesday this week, including ASB, student clubs, individual focus groups. We are now waiting the results for our visit. ASB has been busy keeping traditions alive. On Saturday, February 27th, there was a small coronation for both Homecoming and King of Hearts Court. Each member of the court was recognized, and the video of the 2 ceremonies are on the webpage. Congratulations to Leticia Sepulveda, our Homecoming Queen, and Rudy Richards, our King of Hearts. ASB has been keeping Burroughs spirit up in Spirit Days and challenges. Tomorrow is BHS Pride Day, with students are encouraged to wear Burroughs merch or school colors, and deadlines for the impersonation challenges coming up. The winner will win $15. in the spirit of good news, outdoor sports have been able to resume practices and even begin competing. Our cross-country team has been incredibly successful at these meets. All students are grateful for the small steps being towards normalcy. That's the end of the report.
Thank you, Madison. If you have to go home and do homework, you can do that.
I'd love to.
That brings us to item 2, reports from members of the board.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Kurt, anything from you, sir?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay, and that brings us to item 3, the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. Can you all hear me? Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. And I do have some remarks to make this evening, but before I start, I do want to express, acknowledgement that I see some additional folks here, and you're very welcome to be here. And some of you may have some comments to make, and we'll welcome those, and we'll listen to those. I think you'll find in some of my comments tonight that there are some questions that I'll attempt to answer and just share some factual information and also share some really exciting news. I'll start with some just customary things that in month 6, our total enrollment was 4,858 students. And last year this time we were at 5,123. So this time around we're about 265 students down from this time last year. I'm wearing my Burroughs green, my green tie for Burroughs green. We had a significant and exciting, I would say, event. The Western Association of Schools and Colleges did their full visit for our accreditation. All high schools in California need to be accredited in order for those transcripts to be accepted at universities and colleges and all of the important things that we want to empower our students to do to reach their goals and their dreams in life. And this comes around every 6 years. And it's a really significant undertaking. The faculty and the staff at Burroughs High School have been working extremely hard for a long time. And because of the pandemic, it really extended the cycle of work, frankly. And so this full visit that came, the 6 or 7 member visiting team really has a huge job to do. They basically take the full report that the Burroughs High School faculty and staff put together that identifies all of these significant areas of study and curriculum and instruction and support and assessment, et cetera. And the job of the committee is to come in and either validate that the self-study was done well or not so well, and to validate the findings. And typically a school will go through and identify what it does well and areas that it would wish to grow, in which to grow. And so the WASC visit summary that I attended really highlighted a lot of local accomplishments, even in challenging times. And of course, there was a significant focus on the community involvement and the community support that is such a big part of our student success. And although they don't really the team doesn't reveal what the accreditation term is, their recommendation, they do reveal what their findings are as far as the self-study. And this is not always the case, but they absolutely affirmed all of all of Burroughs High School's self-identified strengths and areas of growth. And they did not add any additional areas of identified growth, which is a significant accomplishment for Burroughs High School. So I'd like to acknowledge Mrs. Cope, our principal at Burroughs High School, her entire leadership team, and of course all of the faculty and staff and parents and students, by the way, at Burroughs High School who were a part of this process. My daughter's a sophomore at Burroughs and was a part of the process, and I got to enjoy watching her involvement and excitement and engagement in the process. So way to go, Burroughs High School. Also, I'd like to acknowledge a few other things. The federal government, some of you may have read or heard that today the President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan. And part of that for schools is what's described as the ESSER 3 monies, ESSER being an acronym, which could be as much as $13 million for Sierra Sands. So when we get final word of what that is, these federal dollars, of course, have stipulations for use. And we'll be scheduling a board workshop next month or in the coming months when board members are available in a special board workshop to discuss initial strategies and appropriate considerations for use. Some good news is the federal school meal waivers program has been extended through September. It was set to expire on June 30th, but it is now extended through September 30, and there's even rumblings that it could potentially be extended further into the calendar year. We do participate in what's called the seamless summer option, and so this is great news for, I would say children, but it's people ages 1 through 18 in the Valley. Whether or not you're a student in Sierra Sands does not matter. Ages 1 to 18 in the Valley can receive these free meals. So be on the lookout in the community for more information about that. And then I'm going to spend the rest of a few minutes talking about in-person instruction, getting students into the classroom where we know the whole child is best served and where we know education comes most alive. And before I mention that, I just want to say that I recognize there are a lot of assessments and opinions and very legitimate perspectives about this topic. I mean, it's a very serious topic as what we do in society to serve our children and to raise them up and to be contributing members of society. And the best way to do that is in person. That is the best way. But I want to acknowledge in Sierra Sands our teachers and our staff members who have worked extremely hard to do an outstanding job with the tools and the situation that we have. It's been a really tough situation, and to put together a Monday through Friday, 6-hour-a-day, full live instruction schedule is not easy. It's extremely difficult, and I do appreciate that Sierra Sands faculty and staff have done that. And when I make comments that say that distance learning is not good enough, which I believe it's not good enough, it's not because we didn't put in our best effort and do an incredible job doing it. It's that distance learning as a platform by itself, it lacks. And so when we're able to get back to in-person, which we're going to be doing very soon, it will be a really exciting time for all of us, starting with faculty and staff in Sierra Sands. We're really looking forward to that. So Assembly Bill 86 was signed into law, which thankfully was a legislative success that now brings more hope than challenges. Whereas if we look back, we've probably had more challenges than hope at times. And now we have a light at the end of the tunnel, and that light is emerging bigger and brighter because this evening at 5 or 5:30, the district reached a tentative agreement with the Desert Area Teachers Association on a daily in-person instruction schedule for TK through 5 starting April 5. So pending ratification, we have an agreement there. And then we begin negotiations to work on a secondary schedule to implement as an addendum to that TA. And the district has already initiated conversations and transmitted at negotiations an interest in focusing on seniors as a starting point for some very obvious reasons. So Senate Bill 86, like any legislation, is not perfect legislation, but it's good legislation in that it provides us these guide rails. It provides us an area of focus, and it provides us funding so that we can marshal those resources to get moving forward. So we do have back to in-person scheduled. And I also want to share, we have some trend data. We've already been registering students to all 6 of our elementary schools, and they have choice. Families have choice. You can either go back in person, which we'd really like for you to do, and we really think it's a great idea to do that, but we also want to honor family choice and agency. And for, at least for the rest of this school year, you can choose to remain in distance learning. And so far, we have trend data that we have a range of about 15% of student enrollment at our elementary schools would prefer distance learning, to a high of about 26 or 27%. So we see a range of about 15 to 27%. In some cases, this data could change a little bit because we have 50 or 60% of parents who have absolutely confirmed their choice. We still have some that need to be confirmed. We do have one school that has 90% of parents confirmed. And in that case, in that school, it was about 26% who opted for distance learning, which is really interesting because when we sent out our survey several weeks ago, we saw that it's 70+% preferred in person. So we're seeing that playing out in reality. And so that's really neat. So I wanted to share that. Some significant updates on that. One of the things that made the timeline and the pathway extremely challenging for a lot of districts, including ours, was that the rollout of the vaccine was very delayed, and we had all anticipated it to be quicker, and it was not. But literally yesterday, we held a clinic for 200 with an allotment of 240 vaccines for Crsn's employees. And so what that means is that we have, when you combine some previous smaller allotments, yesterday brought us to about nearly 380 employees who've been vaccinated. So we believe that while there are just a few individual circumstances where conflicting schedules and such got in the way, we believe that we're near 100% of Crsn's employees who want to be vaccinated, who have been vaccinated. There is a small percentage of those who have been vaccinated who will have to come in at the end of the month and get their second dose. But yesterday, the 240 vaccines that were administered were the Johnson & Johnson form, which was a one-shot deal. So that completely transforms everything for us. That this week, literally, was the first time where we could say most of our employees have been vaccinated. I want to acknowledge that like I started, the best way to educate the whole child is to be in person. And so, you know, there may be some folks who say, well, why start on April 5? You know, is it too little, too late? And we say absolutely not. It's this. If we had one day in person, we would do it because that's the right way. That's the right thing to do. I want to make a distinction here that we're really proud of the agreement that we struck with our Teachers Association because we're going to be serving students in person every single day. If you look around the state of California, a lot of school districts have opted for different forms of hybrid that do not include daily instruction. So whereas there may be some people who don't prefer or like what it's going to look like, we see this as a maximum implementation within the confines of what the state of California has laid down before us by law. Doing over 2 hours in the morning and over 2 hours in the afternoon is as much as we can possibly do for now. And then we are very hopeful, and I'm very optimistic that when we, in a few short months, move back into school in August, barring some unforeseen change in environment, I think we're much closer or there at a full new norm. But I do want to say that we are still in the purple tier, which is kind of feels strange because we're all so eager to not be in the purple tier. We do think we'll be in the red tier soon, and there are still serious restrictions in the red tier. I also want to say just a couple other things. There are new unknowns because we have new realities. You know, public education has always been, for the most part, kind of a factory of service, right? There are built-in efficiencies, and you know what you know. Even in that construct, when you build a secondary school master schedule like a middle school or a high school, it takes 5 months to figure that out. For those of you who have students in schools like I do, they're making their course selections right now. And then we have 5 months to figure out the complex master schedule. We're talking about enrolling students now and figuring out in a matter of days. But oh, by the way, there's choice, which is a good thing. I'm not complaining, but now there's choice. So we really don't know what we don't know. And so because parents for now have a choice as to in-person or distance learning, it does complicate the process. So we don't know precisely always if it'll be the same teacher or what have you, but that's because inherently it's a new reality. So we just have to all kind of understand that situation. So I'll just run through just a few. We have fielded a lot of questions and concerns by the public, and we welcome that. We respect that the best school district is the one that has a maximum relationship with its parents and business partners. So these are some of the questions that have come through a lot. So how will this affect this schedule that's coming April 5? How will this affect the special education acute cohort students who are already back at school and attending for 4 hours or more? Will they be reduced to the hybrid schedule of 2.5 hours? The answer is no. For those special education self-contained classrooms, we will maintain status quo and finish out this year the way they are. So if you have a student in the special education classrooms, they will finish this year the same way that you have them going to school right now.
Dr. Ostes, if I can interrupt you just a second. We've had reports that you're going to have to speak directly into your mic for the people who are listening on television.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. will 4-hour elementary learning hubs be eliminated? Now, the answer on that on April 5 is yes. We will eliminate and disband those hubs because those students will be distributed into the actual in-person learning program where the teacher will be in the classroom with those students and teaching live instruction. So yes, we would disband those learning hubs and put those students into the live classroom. The question might be, why have we focused and why has there been a focus on younger students only? What happens to secondary? Well, the focus on younger learners has been the state priority and focus from the very beginning. There's a recognition from an academic and a social perspective that there are critical foundational literacy and numeracy skills that must be a focus, as well as social skills acquisition, so that we can equip these students to get these foundational skills and then apply them for the next 9, 10, 11, 12 years of his or her education. And while every student matters equally as much, the older students have, theoretically at least, a little more reservoir to be resilient. So from a pandemic perspective, there are also legal mandates and guidelines that absolutely dictate what we can do with stable cohorts, which are elementary classrooms, versus unstable cohorts, which is secondary. So there's an academic and a social reason to focus on younger learners, but there's also a pragmatic consideration with regard to having a stable cohort of students, and it's more practical in a purple or red tier to be able to implement something for that age of students. A concern or question has come, will elementary teachers be stretched too thin with the assumption that the same teachers who teach in person will also be distance learning teachers? And actually, teachers will not serve as both. We will have in-person teachers and we will have distance learning teachers. And there are excellent benefits for that. There are obviously, case by case, may be some disillusion on that because there will be, in some cases, students will have to go to a different teacher roster for the rest of the school year. And that's not optimal, but nothing about the pandemic has been optimal, and we'll do the best we can to keep what we call roster stability. We will try to maximize roster stability, but we also need to move forward. We can't be stuck in a paralysis and just not go to in-person because we don't have a perfect solution. So we got to move forward. Just a couple other questions, and I'll get this meeting moving through. One question comes, will kids be able to go to the playground, or will they, quote, be stuck behind plexiglass staring at a computer for 2.5 hours without being allowed to get out of their chair? Well, don't forget, these students are going to be in with their teacher in live instruction, so they won't be sitting behind a computer. Yes, there will be plexiglass. For the transition back, there will be plexiglass barriers, and there'll be all kinds of practices and face coverings and things that some of us don't like, some of us don't mind. But it will be live instruction, and there will be ingress and egress practices. But basically, what I would say is, I'm not going to go into the details how it looks, but we will utilize. We'll make sure there's breaks. We'll make sure that we get kids up and about and moving. But in this transition, I don't want to be disingenuous. There will be some limitation of what they're able to do in those first couple months going back. And of course, we hope that will be very temporary. And I guess the last thing I would say is, again, is this plan too little, too late? And I say absolutely not. From the very beginning, our board has made it very clear about its recognition that in-person learning is the optimal form of learning. That's where we want to be. We have our, let's see, I guess, and I would say that here we are. We have the opportunity to leverage Assembly Bill, Senate Bill 86, and we are leveraging those new guidelines. We're leveraging our new opportunity, and we're not delaying. The way that we have interpreted this is we're getting in absolutely the soonest that we possibly could, which for some people is not soon enough, and we totally understand that. We're not looking for any sympathy or any agreement. We just want you to know that in-person learning is our emphasis, and we're a student, the whole child is served best, and we're extremely excited about letting you know that April 5, we are starting. Students will be in the classroom, and we will be on our way back to our new norm, and this is a really good thing for Sierra Sands. And for all those for whom this has been a real difficult trial, I'm so sorry. I wish I had a magic wand to wave it away, and if I could, I would. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to you, Mr. Ferris.
Thank you, Dr. Ostash. I think now I have to make sure I follow that same advice about speaking directly into the microphone. That now brings us to communications from the to the Board of Trustees from the Desert Area Teachers Association.
Good evening. President Ferris, Superintendent Ostash, community, staff, everybody. I want to start all this off with saying I'm a very proud Burroughs staff member, and we just went through WASC, and it was intense, and I just want to give another shout out to the two really awesome women who got all this together, Susie Burgess and Ernestina Wilson. They're amazing, and they worked hard. I just want to give them their due. So Tuesday, we spent 5 hours together negotiating. 3 hours today, which is nothing. 3 hours, please. So we have spent an awful lot of time together. I think we've had like 35 meetings. And I have to say that I really believe in this process, the negotiations process, because we made it work. It does work, and we've made it work. And even on the nights when we got done and we probably all said, what did we accomplish? Well, what we've always accomplished is listening to each other. And even on the times when we maybe didn't want to hear what the other side said, we listened and we came back and we sat at that table and we made it work. And I have to say that I'm incredibly proud of the negotiations team and the work that we've done with the district. And so here we are, right? We get to go back on campus. School's always been in, but we're heading back to campus. And I've stood up here many nights and asked for different things. I want you to listen to us or to thank you, just to talk about the importance of being in school. And it is important. And so what I want to say tonight to all of us, that as we finally begin our march into this brave new world, and that's what it is, the return to campus, what I want to ask is that we all remember to practice kindness, to extend grace, and to forgive pretty quickly, because it's not going to be easy. It's going to be bumpy. Now, we have spent so many hours planning and planning, so it won't be bumpy, but it will be, because it's new and it's different. But it's the right thing to do. We all want it. And I think as long as we remember that all of us here in this room care about giving our kids the best, I think we're going to be okay. So I just want to say again, thank you. I don't even know. Thank you to everybody. I'm excited about our return. I'm excited that we're doing it in the best way possible, that we're going to be safe, that the kids are going to be happy. And I look forward to what the next few weeks will bring. Thank you.
Thank you. An important tone, Eileen. Appreciate that. Next, we go to the report of Board of Trustees about the California School Employees Association. Do we have a representative tonight?
Hello, School Board President, board members, and Dr. Ostash and community. My name is Sylvia Payanis, and I am the Union President for the CSEA Chapter 188. During this pandemic, CSEA and the district have worked side by side and developed a mutual, respectful working relationship. I want to thank all of the hard work. I want to thank everyone for all the hard work that has been going on to get our kids back into school. CSEA is looking forward to submitting our Sunshine proposal to the board at the April board meeting. We are hoping to have the 2021 reopeners done so that we can get started with our successor. We do have a meeting set with Mr. Ald for Tuesday to get those negotiations underway for the 2021 school year. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. That brings us to item number 6, communications from the public. The board will provide time during the discussion of each agenda item for the members of the public to comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on items that are not on the agenda. Comments should relate to items of public interest within the board's jurisdiction. The law prohibits the board from taking action on items that are not on the agenda, and if appropriate, your comments will be referred to staff for response. When addressing the board, please state your name and address at the podium and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. In accordance with the board bylaws, the board will limit the total time for public input to 30 minutes. Those wishing to address the board beyond that 30-minute time limit may do so at the end of the scheduled meeting agenda. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm back. Tammy Jones, 756 West Springer, Ridgecrest. And I'll stay within my 3 minutes tonight. First, thank you for putting the information out regarding work you all have been doing. I know it's been tough. I couldn't imagine sitting in your seat and doing what you have to do, and to listen to us parents who are a little concerned.
I'm sorry, can I ask you to speak more directly in the microphone? Nobody in TV land can hear you.
Yeah, I'll do that. So first, thanks for putting in the information and the work all you've been doing to return to in-person learning. Although still not an ideal setting, as 2.5 hours a day is quite frankly just to appease us, but more based on funding. I'm saddened that our students have a price tag. I would encourage all parents and guardians to visit the district website and read through the information provided. It's really informative. I hope all future information and how to obtain information will be much more transparent. I do have questions for you. The opening plan references a committee who is part of that committee. Does it include parents or guardian presence? I may have missed it, but I do not see a reference in the plan on how we are going to help our students get back to the level or standard that they should be. How are we going to get them back up to standards? Is there a plan or committee that will include parents or guardians presence? In closing, I have spoken to many parents, grandparents, guardians, and not one has expressed that their students are succeeding. Most have stated they're failing. I know we are all expecting answers and transparent information. I am encouraging all parents to attend monthly board meetings and visit the district website and read the plans in place for returning to school. I also encourage parents or students to voice or write the struggles you are having and experiencing. Please, parents, get involved. Don't let the district make decisions without your voice being heard. Know what your school district is doing, not just returning to the classroom, but what we're being taught in our classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Yes, Cindy Clausen, 720 White Oak Drive, Ridgecrest. Could you clarify more what your plans are for the junior high and high school kids? Because we have high schoolers that are failing miserably. And for my own self, I have an honor student who currently has 5 Fs and 2 Bs, or B and a C. Not acceptable. He has never, ever had grades like this. And he's given up. He's truly given up. And when he hears that you want to bring back K through 5, he's saying, what about us? Do we not matter? So how are you addressing the high schoolers and the junior high kids? And how are you making them feel like you care about them? Because they're not hearing it. They're quitting. They're giving up. I hear it, like she said, from all the other parents. These kids are quitting. They're quitting on you. They're done. They've quit. And I'm talking honor students. I would love to see where these honor students from years past are sitting academically today. Because I guarantee they're not succeeding. And it's horrible. And I don't understand if you can bring K through 5 back, why you can't bring K through 12 back. These kids need to be in school. It's horrible. And I don't know if you're not hearing it, but I'm hearing it from parents and everyone else. Like she said, kids are giving up. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible what we're doing to these children. You said something about seniors, but what about juniors? They're preparing for college. There should be applying for scholarships. Where's their support from their school? It's not there. My son hasn't gotten anything. It's horrible. He was trying to do the 4-year engineering program, and he failed engineering. So you know what he said? I'm not taking it next year, Mom. Why? It's pointless. I can't get 4 years. It's not offered in summer school. What am I supposed to do? He failed because he had a medical issue. That medical issue, if he was in school, he would have been in a quad of 4 kids. 4 kids could have helped him succeed in a quad in engineering, but on your own, you can't do it. He was not able to use his hand. He had a tumor. He had no peer support. He had no school support. Now, I'm not saying it was all of his teachers, and I'm not saying it's the teacher's fault. I'm saying we're failing these kids. Miserably, we're failing them. And you need to do something to let these juniors and seniors know that you do care more than K through 5. Because they're hearing that only K through 5 matter. Only K through 5 need to get an education right now. It's awful. That's all I got to say. But you need to think about your high schoolers.
Thank you. Before we go to the next speaker, I would let you know, because this time is limited to 30 minutes, I'm going to ask Dr. Ostash to address a couple of those questions so that we can respond, but we don't want to interrupt your time, so go ahead and take your time so we don't reduce yours. Thank you.
That's fine. I'll be fairly short. My name is Holly Ferris. I live at 449 Lorianne. My comment's actually going to tag on to Cindy's a little bit. I just left the high school, a room of broken-hearted boys whose football season just got canceled. It didn't get canceled because of the guidelines. It got canceled because they've all quit. There is not enough kids out there to make a team. There's not enough kids out there to make a team because these kids aren't part of a community. They're not part of a support network. They aren't part of a school. They don't have any school spirit. I'm not bashing these kids. These kids have so much heart. So much heart. You have a room full of crying 15 to 18-year-old boys is where I just left. This is not acceptable. No one is, I'm sorry, that's not true. I know you guys care about these kids. I really do. But other districts have figured this out. My nieces and nephews are in junior high and high school in Northern California. They have been for months. My siblings that work in elementary schools have been working since October with their students in the classroom. I know that's an agenda item and that's not this time, but I really wanted to share what I just left with these boys. And I'm heartbroken for them. I'm heartbroken for their coaches who have poured their blood, sweat, and tears into them. It's heartbreaking. And I really expected better from our district. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Catherine McLaughlin.
I'm going to have to ask you to speak right into the microphone because evidently, even if we can hear you, unless you're right in the microphone, the television folks can't hear you. So we want to make sure you're heard all around. Thank you.
Catherine McLaughlin, 1212 Rebecca Avenue. I guess first I want to say congratulations to Burroughs High School on what will most likely be a successful accreditation. So congratulations for a job well done there. What I'd like to read you, and I'm not going to make it through it without being emotional, but this is a letter from my son, who you guys all need to hear from, who's a student that we're serving. Reasons why online school is horrible. When the internet goes out, we can't do anything. We only see our siblings or no one at all. When we're learning, we can easily get distracted by dogs, phones, or any other things. And no teachers or really anyone is asking how we feel about this or even asks our opinion. It's like no one cares. Those are tough words to hear and tough words for me to say. And that's why I'm standing up here. And the reason I came to speak to you all tonight, I appreciate the opportunity. So the reason for me being here is certainly not for me, but for the hundreds of students in our community, specifically for me, for my 3 sons who have been forced to distance learn for an entire year. I have children in elementary school, middle school, and high school. So I've seen the impact on all 3 levels. And I got to tell you, it's not just the K through 5 that's struggling. The anxiety, the depression that's impacting our secondary schools is staggering. and some of them don't even realize that they're anxious or depressed. It just manifests itself as anger and being grumpy. Our students are the real victims in this pandemic, and they have no voice. They have no say into what's happening to them. They just have to suck it up and deal with it. I've heard some people say how lucky we are to get this extra time with our children at home, and at first I agreed. For the 14 days to flatten the curve, we tried to make it as fun as possible. I don't agree with that anymore. This is not quality family time spent together. These are people in the same building, in their own corners of the building, staring at screens, not interacting with each other. We pass in the hallways, but let me be clear, this is not quality family time. I bet you if you ask most of the secondary teachers that they would probably say that 95% of their students don't even turn their cameras on anymore. We're not seeing these kids' faces. We're not seeing what this is doing to them. You're not seeing how checked out they are, or how sad they are, or how apathetic they've become. Teachers, thank you for the work that you've done. Your kids miss you. They want to see you in person. They're flat out, I'm going to go over my 3 minutes, I think, and I'll wrap it up. But what we need from you guys is a full 100% commitment to all-day, full in-person schedule for every learning grade, TK through 12th. If we can't get it done before the end of the school year, we have got to get it done when we start school in August. I'm certain there are countless parents who are willing to roll up their sleeves and work alongside you to get this done. Let me be the first one to volunteer to help you. Tell us what we can do to help you. Our community thrives when we work together, so let's continue the great partnership we have. Put the kids first, and let's get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any others? Are you coming to the microphone, or? Okay. I didn't want to cut anybody off. We certainly appreciate your passion. We understand your frustrations, and indeed it has been a horrific time. There were a couple of questions asked from the podium that I'd like to ask Dr. Ostash to address, because I think there is a difficulty of understanding exactly what we're dealing with. This board in this district has worked from the very beginning to aggressively try and find every answer we could to bring kids back to the classrooms in a safe way. There are restrictions that we are held to, that we must comply with. There are many places in the state, and Northern California is one of them, who have different restrictions, and they are able to return to class. We don't have that same luxury here. So I'd like to ask Dr. Ostash, if you would, to talk a little bit about the difficulty with the mixed cohorts and why that does not allow us to do secondary, and then maybe some of the zones, the color zones that, again, prevent us from being able to do what we would like to do.
Sure, Ed. What I'd really like to do is just start by saying I'm hearing you, and I emotionally agree with you. There's nothing that anyone said here, expressed, that I don't agree with. I 100% agree. I told you my daughter's a sophomore in Burroughs. How do you think it makes me feel when every single day I'm asked, when are we going back? When are we going back? So I just want you to know I empathize with you, and I don't want to make any excuses. We're going to do everything we can to act and to move, and I don't want to make nice here. When it's painful, it's painful, and I can't do anything to erase what has already happened. But I do believe that moving forward, I'm going to integrate a little bit of an answer here. Moving forward, where we have been is in the deep purple. Now, I'm not going to go into details of what that means, but the deep purple means very severe restrictions for mixed cohorts, for secondary environment, where you're moving students from class to class to class.
Excuse me, Dr. Ostash, could you, I'm not sure everybody understands mixed cohorts, what that actually means as far as taking different groups of people and not allowing them.
The stable cohort versus the mixed cohort. So if you're a kindergartner or a first grader, you have your same peers all day long in the classroom with the same teacher. And so that would be called a stable cohort. Even though in the deep purple, you would think that's good enough, it's still not good enough because you have to have greater space between each student, and so you have a limitation in the number of students who could be there. But in a secondary environment, of course, we have the mixed cohorts, which is when you have lots of different students who go to lots of different classes with lots of different teachers, and so there's a very serious restriction as to what can happen there. And I'd be happy to talk with anybody over the phone or even in person. We can do that too, and I can give more details about it. But what I'd rather do, if you don't mind, Mr. Ferris, is focus on the future, that we went from the deep purple to the purple, and we believe we're very much anticipating this. We were disappointed when we learned on Tuesday we were not moving into the red, because as we move through these different colors, then the guidelines, they do change, and they start to loosen up, and you start to get more opportunity to move back into the secondary in-person environment, which we intend to do on April 5 as well. But I don't want to, again, I don't want to be disingenuous. We're going to start and focus with the seniors, implement, and then see where we can go, pushing down through different grade levels. But I just want to let you know we're hearing you, and we believe we'll be in the red this month. We don't know that for sure, but we believe we will, and then that points to a bright future. And I don't want to make any comments up here that I don't have the authority to make, but I want to express to you my personal optimism, my personal and professional, hopefulness, optimism. I believe that we will be coming back to our new norm in August. I don't know that for sure, but that's my hope. That's my optimism, and I think we'll all be much happier. And I also believe that school districts, and I'll focus on Sierra Sands, will be much better school districts in the future after pandemic than we were before pandemic, because I think that in all of this pain and all this agony for a number of people, we're going to have learned a lot of lessons. We're going to have moved the needle on virtual education platforms and different ways of thinking and teaching and assessing and being available. And I think that for students who are quietly or maybe not so quietly suffering in the past, they're going to have new permanent opportunities moving forward. We'll be able to integrate things like possibly distance learning. Whereas before we had maybe 0.5% of our student body in an independent study program, we may have 10%. I'm making that up. We may have 10% or 5% or 20% of our students who at any given time are in some kind of a different pathway that's more flexible and maybe better fits a student's learning style. So that, it's not like in the past, a year and a half ago and beyond, that every student was thriving, right? Not every student was thriving. So now, when we learn these new things through all this pain, we'll have different permanent opportunities where more of our students will thrive. And so I'm not saying any of that to wipe away the pain and concern you have, because I just want to hear you. I want to give you that opportunity to say, I'm hearing you. And I promise you that every day we're working really hard to expedite and get us back into that in-person experience in secondary. There will be more information to come on that. And I have taken some notes. I'd be happy to reach out, but anyone who would like to know more, I'm not going to get any more details here, but I'd be happy to do that. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry, and I'm listening, and I'm hearing you.
Thank you, Dr. Ostesh, and thank you for bringing your concerns and your passion to this evening's meeting. We will now move to Educational Administration. To Personnel Administration, 8.1.
Second.
There's been a motion for 8.1 and 8.2 and a second. We will take a roll call vote. Mr. Scott? Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Dr. Houck?
Aye.
And myself, aye. It is unanimous. That brings us to 8.3, approval of non-reelection of certificated personnel with less than a preliminary credential as a result of the decision of the California 5th District Court of Appeals.
President Ferris, board members, Dr. Ostash, community and staff. In 2006 and 2007, as a result of the 5th Appellate Court decision regarding the Bakersfield Elementary Teachers Association versus Bakersfield City School District, the Sierra Sands Unified School District modified procedures in compliance with the court and non-re-elected all certificated employees working on the basis of less than a preliminary credential. In compliance with this court decision and to preserve the integrity of the layoff seniority list, Council has advised the district to seek board authorization to non-re-elect 43 certificated employees who are employed by the district for 2020-2021 on the basis of less than preliminary credentials issued by the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. The district will not be able to offer reemployment to any of the impacted employees until after July 1st, 2021. Please note that the district has communicated with the association as well as with all the affected employees during this process prior to the Board of Education meeting. Following board approval, the affected employees will all receive a non-re-election letter from the district prior to March 15, 2021, as required by California Education Code. This allows the district to release these employees without cause, effective at the end of the 2020-2021 school year, and eliminates the issue of accruing seniority without being fully credentialed. It also allows the district to recruit, as it has previously done, for fully credentialed teachers for these positions before rehiring those not fully credentialed. If the district is unable to employ fully credentialed teachers in any of these positions, it may reemploy any or all of the impacted employees for the 2021-22 school year. The financial implications are unknown. There is potential for additional unemployment insurance costs to the district as a result of this action. It is the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the non-re-election of 43 certificated employees employed by the district for the 2020-2021 school year on less than a preliminary credential as presented.
Move recommended action. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions from board members? Any questions from members of the public, staff? If not, we will take the vote. Dr. Houck?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Myself, aye. It is unanimous. That brings us to item 4, approval of new classified job description, paraprofessional 3, special education.
There are approximately 100 special education paraprofessionals in the district. Paraprofessionals provide essential assistance to the classroom teacher with the instruction, training, classroom control, and supervision of special education students. Over time, additional specialized trainings have become embedded into the resources that our SEPA department offers for the professional development of our paraprofessionals. In additional training and education, the district has an interest in the effective recruitment and retention of our paraprofessional workforce in order to ensure the highest quality and stability of paraprofessional support in the classroom. Through discussion and partnership in the collective bargaining process in the 2017-18 school year, district and CSEA Chapter 188 leadership collectively determined that efforts should be made to develop a progressive career pathway for paraprofessionals. Over time, additional education and training of paraprofessional staff has become either required by the state and or established as a district priority. Through the development of a tiered work assignment, the district believes it will be able to improve the recruitment and retention efforts for our paraprofessional workforce. The need for paraprofessionals trained in applied behavior analysis has become increasingly evident. Parents of students with behavioral issues have been requesting personnel who are explicitly trained in the ABA techniques and have the certification to demonstrate those skills. To avoid having to contract for these services with outside agencies, SEPA proposes to train paraprofessionals within the district's pool of employees. The attached job description for paraprofessional 3 reflects the current skills, experience, and capabilities needed to effectively support our special education program in the area of ABA. This is a new job description to help create a tiered career pathway for paraprofessionals. Financial implications. The addition of this position estimated to cost approximately $40,000. It is the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the new classified job description, paraprofessional 3, special education, as presented.
Move recommended action.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any questions by board members? Any questions or comments by staff or community? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Dr. Houck?
Aye.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous. That brings us to item 5, approval of reclassify the 2 account clerk 3 positions in the business office to account clerk 4 positions.
Currently, the business office has 1 account clerk 4 position and 2 account clerk 3 positions. It was determined last year that there is a need to streamline duties and responsibilities of personnel in the business office due to the pandemic. An extensive review of the current account clerk 3 positions was conducted earlier this year to determine the scope of duties they are performing. After an analysis of the duties performed and a thorough review of similar descriptions, duties, and responsibilities, it was determined that the current account clerk 3 positions closely mirror those of an account clerk 4. To continue to support the movement of our classified personnel and in negotiations with CSEA and its Chapter 188, there is a mutual justification to reclassify the 2 account clerk 3 positions in the business office to account clerk 4 beginning April 1st, 2021. Financial implications is estimated to cost approximately $6,000. It's the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the reclassification of 2 account clerk 3 positions in the business office to account clerk 4 positions.
Move recommended action. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions by board members? Any questions or comments by the public or staff? Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Dr. Houck?
Aye.
Myself, aye. It is unanimous. That moves us to item 6, presentation of initial sunshine contact proposal for the 2021-22 for the Desert Area Teachers Association to the Board of Education.
The Desert Area Teachers Association, or DATA, will submit their sunshine proposal to the board, or actually just to me in pandemic, for the 2021-2022 school year. The Desert Area Teachers Association will submit its initial sunshine contract at the board meeting, to the Board of Education at the meeting. It is the superintendent's recommendation the board receive the initial sunshine contract proposal from the Desert Area Teachers Association and set the next regular meeting date as the date for the public hearing on the proposal.
Need action.
We will not read the action. The action is actually receiving it, so we don't need to vote on that. Thank you, Mr. All. Moves us to item 9, general administration, approval of implementation of the in-person learning for students in Sierra Sands Unified School District. Dr. Ostash.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ferris, and just want to make sure you can hear me. Sometimes it's volumed up a little bit. Okay, we've been talking a lot about in-person learning, and one of the components that does actually exist in this arena is the passage of Senate Bill, Assembly Bill 86, which as a component of that, there is a funding stream. There are 2 types of funding streams. There's the in-person incentive grant, and then there's the basically the learning loss component of that. And in order for our district to position itself to be in compliance with this funding, we have to, I would say, have a plan for implementing in-person instruction in ways that comply with the law, both in substance and in timing. And so I'll spare you the reading of all of these details that you are more than welcome to read about in the packet. But what I will be asking the board to approve is our plan to implement an in-person learning opportunity, much of which has been described this evening, and parents at elementary schools have received much information about, and soon we anticipate parents in at Burroughs High School and Mesquite High School will be hearing about, and we hope as we phase and stage that parents will be hearing throughout the grades and also in the middle schools, but with no explicit timeline admittedly stated for that. We have a plan. We have a tentative agreement with Desert Area Teachers Association. We will let them go through their ratification process. We will go through our ratification process, and we have a plan that will put us in compliance with AB SB 86. The financial implications for the successful and timely implementation of an in-person learning opportunity for students will qualify the district for the in-person instruction grant in the amount of approximately $1.6 million. And what's most important is our kids and our students and educating our kids. A necessary component of that is having the financial resources and assets available to do that and to do it well. There are significant extra costs in transitioning back to in-person with the CDPH, the CDC, and all of the different county, state, and federal guidelines for compliance for safety reasons. It's increased personnel, increased custodial, for example, for cleaning, increased supplies, both material and a lot of it's ongoing costs. And so the purpose of this money is to position us so that we're successful in getting the extra resources we need to do the extra work to get our kids back in person. And that's the summary of what all of this is about. And it is my recommendation that the board approve the implementation of in-person learning for students in Sierra Sands Unified School District consistent with the framework as identified in Senate Bill, Assembly Bill 86 to commence no later than Monday, April 5, 2021.
Moving recommended action.
Recommended action has been moved and seconded. Do we have any questions or comments from the board members? Have any questions or comments from members of the public? Hearing none, we will call for the vote. Dr. Houck?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Myself, aye. It is unanimous. Brings us to item 10, Construction Administration, 10.1, Report to the Board on Construction Activities and Issues. Mr. Coit.
President Ferris, members of the board, Superintendent Ostash, staff and community, I'm pleased to give this update on the status of the district's construction activities. This report is presented for informational purposes only and no action is required. This evening I'd like to share a brief PowerPoint that shows the Burroughs Pack earthquake repair progress. So I'll go through some slides on the PowerPoint, just showing chronologically how things have gone. Oh, wrong arrow. So I think the day after the earthquake, we saw that we had some ceiling tiles and lights hanging down. So here's an example of I think one of the worst lights. We had DSA out to do inspections and structural engineers. And that's an old guy climbed up a ladder with a flashlight to get this picture. That shows the grid wasn't sufficient. We didn't have clips on the grid. We didn't have adequate bracing on the T-bar, the sway wires. It was 50-year-old code, and we weren't meeting current code. And also, if you look at the one beam there and the white color, that was determined to be asbestos-containing fireproofing on those beams. Another code issue was the roof trusses were exposed and didn't meet current fire code. So we went back and forth with DSA for several months trying to say, wait a minute, why do we have to bring everything to current code? And the answer was, that's what you've got to do. So So we came up with a plan. How do we do that? How do we get to current code? And it was that we had to remove the existing grid and build an envelope that was fire rated above it, and also do our asbestos abatement. So this is the scaffold that we had erected to do all that work on, because everybody that's familiar with the PAC realizes you can't get up there with a ladder. So we had to scaffold that entire back area of the PAC. When the scaffold was up and then containment was started, we were also doing plaster repairs, because we did have several areas where the plaster was cracked from the earthquake. And that's the asbestos containment area while the abatement was getting started. This is construction of the fire-rated assembly. So above that T-bar area, we have a fire-rated assembly, and it's 2 layers of sheetrock, and it's taped, and just like you would do for a normal construction. And that's how we built our fire-rated assembly. So that's what's above the T-bar that's back in there. That's just another view of the fire-rated assembly, and that one opening is where we had a fire damper going through a firewall. That's an example of the T-bar grid installation being put back up, and then you can see the ductworks going back in place. We did have to remove the existing ductwork in order to get in and do the abatement. That's a picture of the T-bar panels being back installed and lights installed. That's looking towards the lobby side from the stage, and you can see the new colors, the repairs to the plaster walls, and that's looking to the, that didn't change. There. Same. There we go. Okay, now we're looking west, still standing on the stage. Again, you can see a little more of the new paint. And that's the complete project on the T-bar area of the PAC. And so in the back half, we've got new LED lighting and, quite a difference. Any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coy. Brings us to 10.2, Mr. Morrison, report to the board on private LTE project update.
Good evening, President Ferris, members of the board, Superintendent Ostash, staff, and community. So we started our presentation off tonight looking at where we're at with DSA, since that's kind of the biggest challenge that we are facing so far in the project. We figured that'd be a good place to start to look at that, and fortunately, we have some good news to start with when we're talking about DSA.
Excuse me just a second, Mr. Morrison.
Yes.
Kurt, can that be heard?
Can you hear me, Kurt?
Yeah, we can hear you really well.
Thank you.
Too well, maybe? So yeah, we do have some good news to start with DSA, and that's that the district office does not require us to go to DSA. Since there are no kids at the district office, we're able to not have to go to DSA. We will have to go through the city and through the building department, but we are hopeful that that will be a much shorter time frame than it will be with DSA. So we're excited about that, to get that part of the project back on track. That being said, we do have to go to DSA with Fowler, Las Flores, and Inyokern. Now, we knew we were going to have to with Fowler.
Sorry, now, we have a lot of guests tonight. DSA is Department of State Architect, is that correct?
Department of State Architect, correct. Yep. So, we send them all their plans and what we're doing, and they make sure it's structurally sound and all of that good stuff. So, speaking of the district office, we won't be going to DSA, but we are going to be going to the city through their building department. We'll also be doing our own structural analysis and doing that stuff to make sure that the equipment we put on there is going to be safe and all that stuff. So we have other avenues we'll follow. It's just that we won't be waiting on DSA for the district office. But again, Fowler, Las Flores, and Unicron, we do have to go through DSA for that. We're going to go through that process. Even though it's a little disappointing that, it's kind of throwing our schedule off a little bit, we also want to make sure we're doing it right, and we don't want to cut any corners. This is a solution that's going to be in the district and benefiting the district for many years to come. So we want to make sure we're doing it right. So we'll go through the DSA process, get that taken care of. The drawings will be completed, 85% completed by next Monday, and that will allow us then to open the project with DSA and get that process started. We anticipate probably about a 6 to 8 week turnaround from DSA on that. We are again hopeful, like again with Las Flores, we do have DSA drawings from not too long ago when that was built. So we're hopeful that Las Flores will go quicker than Fowler, and we're not sure with any current, but right now that's what we're planning on is 6 to 8 weeks. So as we've been having fun with DSA, we've been doing some other things as well. We have gotten some work done over at Fowler. You can see we've got a few pictures on there. That is where we did soil sample and geotechnical drilling. We did a survey on March 4th. And so that those activities are done to test the ground and see what kind of concrete and how big and wide and deep the concrete needs to be to support that tower. So we've got some stuff going there, so that's good. We've been working on finalizing our drawings, as we see 85% on Monday. We do expect those to be 100% done, I think, on the 25th of this month. So we'll be able to move forward with that. We've been finalizing the bill of material, making sure we've got everything that we're going to need, and we've been starting to order and procure some of that equipment, getting that in and configured and getting it burnt in and getting it ready for when we do get through DSA and those processes, we can get everything installed. And that's really all I have for tonight, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions by board members? Any questions by members of the public?
Yeah, so once again, thanks again for the update. So this should be done by...
Directly in the mic. Sorry.
This should be done by the start of school year, correct?
Yeah, right now our timeline has been pushed back to like June and July for some of those, but we are still expecting to have those done by the start of next school year.
Okay, thank you.
Barring any other setbacks, but yeah.
Thanks.
Any questions by members of the public, staff? Thank you so much for that report.
Thank you.
That brings us to our special concurrent meeting agenda, Construction Administration adoption of the Resolution 25-2021, making required findings and authorization implementing of the design-built project delivery method for the HVAC replacement of 4 schools and control system upgrades for the air handle repairs at Burroughs High School Performing Arts Center. Mr. Coit.
The Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2021 was signed into law on December 27, 2020, and provides $44.3 billion for elementary and secondary school emergency relief, also known as ESSER II fund. Allowable uses of ESSER II funds include, in addition to the allowable uses specified for ESSER funding, test, repair, upgrade projects to improve air quality in school buildings. The district is estimated to receive $5.9 million in ESSER II funds. So our current considerations, the district intends to use ESSER II funds to improve the heating, ventilation, and cooling systems at 4 elementary schools and perform control system upgrades and air handling repairs at Burroughs High School Performing Arts Center. Under the Education Code 17250.10, the district may utilize a design-build project delivery method for the projects in excess of $1 million, awarding the contract to either the low bidder or best value. The district feels that a design-build delivery method would reduce cost, expedite completion, and provide features not available through a design bid-build delivery method. Approval of this resolution will enable the district to solicit quotes from vendors using a design-build delivery method. There are no financial implications, and it is the superintendent's recommendation that the board adopt Resolution 25, 2021, making required findings and authorizing implementation of the design build delivery method for HVAC replacement at 4 schools and control system upgrades and air handler repairs at the Burroughs High School Performing Arts Center as presented.
Move recommended action.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Do we have any questions or comments by board members? I would like to just make a couple of quick comments and thank the district leadership on a couple of things. First of all, I see signs of how we're moving forward here, of some of the learnings we have done through our previous construction projects. And we had a lot of unexpected costs and a lot of things that kind of jumped up in front of us. And we, during that time, I think we were very clear that we wanted to make sure we learned from those lessons and did better in future projects. And I see elements of that in how you're presenting these new projects, and I really appreciate that on behalf of our public that we serve, is being wise in spending those dollars. The next comment I want to make, I think, is the compliment to our leadership to identify that all these monies that are coming to our district in this moment of crisis could very easily just be spent on the immediate needs of the crisis. But there's been strong leadership to see that as a district, we plan carefully and are meticulous to see that we get long-term benefit for our students and of our community in having these dollars to spend. And I think that's not happening everywhere. And I believe it's notable, and I think we need to express our thanks for our leadership in seeing how important that is as a long-term benefit to our community. So I just want to see that that's recognized. Any comments or questions from the public? Yes, please.
It will be Los Flores, Fowler, Pierce, and Inyakern.
Any other questions from the public? If not, I will call for the vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Dr. Houck?
Aye.
Myself? Aye. It's unanimous. That moves us to item 2, adoption of resolution number 26, 2021, to approve the agreement with the Garland Company Incorporated for the purchase of Burroughs High School Performing Arts Center roofing materials pursuant to a California Multiple Award Schedule contract. Mr. Coit.
The district recently completed earthquake repairs at the Burroughs High School Performing Arts Center. The repairs involved extensive construction in the ceiling as well as installation of new ceiling grid and lighting. The PAC exterior roof has several damaged areas that have been repaired on multiple occasions, and the district is concerned that if the roof is not replaced, water damage will occur in areas that have been repaired. The district seeks the materials to replace the PAC roof pursuant to Public Contract Code sections 10290 and 10298. The Governing Board of School Districts may, without competitive bidding, contract with suppliers that have been awarded contracts, master agreements, multiple award schedules, cooperative agreements, or other types of agreements with state agencies that leverage the state's buying power for acquisitions authorized under specific sections of California Public Contract Code. District staff, in consultation with legal counsel, procured and reviewed a proposal for the materials needed for the project from the Garland Company Incorporated. The proposal incorporates the terms and conditions established by the State of California Department of General Services Procurement Division through the California Multiple Awards Schedule Contract 4-20-56-0006B, the CMAS contract. Approval of the resolution will enable the district to procure the materials necessary to complete the project pursuant to the terms of the CMAS contract as permitted by California Public Contract Code. The quote received from the Garland Company for materials is $56,078.95. This will be funded by Fund 14, Deferred Maintenance. It is the Superintendent's recommendation that the Board adopt Resolution 26, 2021, to approve an agreement with the Garland Company, Incorporated, for the purpose of purchase of Burroughs High School Performing Arts Center materials pursuant to a California Multiple Award Schedule contract as presented.
We recommend action.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions by board members? Mr. Johnson.
This is only for material. This isn't for installation.
Into your mic, please.
It's on.
It's on. You got
So this is just for the materials, not for installation, correct?
This is for materials. We're working on a separate request for bids. We believe the labor for this will be performed under our informal bidding process, our CUPCA process. It will be under the bid limit. So Garland has done this method several times where districts will buy the materials, so we won't have the markup that's associated with the contractor supplying the materials. And then we're actually started today working on getting our RFB together. We've got the scope written for the work already, and so we hope next week to be putting the RFB out for that work. And currently we have 8 roofing contractors that are in our on our CUPCA list, so we think there'll be a lot of interest in this project.
Thanks.
Mr. Rockwell, did you also have a question?
No, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay, you bet.
I just have one more question. On our next construction update, last item, can we get like a total cost that we spent on the PAC? Because I know the last 3 years we've spent, I mean, every board meeting we got some PAC thing that we keep doing and doing. I just wonder if it'd been easier to tear it down and build a new one for how much we paid.
I can tell you where we're at right now, as if you'd like to know. We're just short of $900,000 for the entire project.
It wasn't bad as I thought, but okay. That's probably
so the answer so far is no.
So yeah, that's all in. That's soft and
that's probably like a $5 million replacement. So yeah. That's okay. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Again, I would just like to comment the attention to care and foresight in seeing that this is handled well, and again. With the resources that we're dealing with, it's important that we have that trust, and I appreciate what's being done in that regard. And I will call for the vote if there are no more. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Dr. Houck?
Aye.
And myself, aye. It's unanimous. We will now temporarily adjourn the meeting of the Sierra Sands Unified School District Board of Education to conduct and call to order the Indian Kern Schools Financing Authority Board of Education meeting. And we will first look at if there are no changes to the agenda, we will adopt the agenda as presented. If there are no changes to the amendments, they will stand approved as presented. And we'll move to item 3, Business Administration. Mrs. Smith, acceptance of the 2019-20 audit reports from the Indian Kern Schools Financing Authority.
Good evening, President Ferris, members of the board, Superintendent Ostash, community, and staff. In accordance with Education Code 35145 and 41020, the authority is required to conduct an annual audit and report the findings of the Indian Kern Schools Financing Authority audit to the board. The 2019-20 audit report has been prepared by the auditing firm of Ide Bailey and has been provided for review. And I would like to, I forgot, we have Ms. Shiloh Grosby on the virtual screen right now in case there's any questions. She's with Ide Bailey. The Indian Kern Schools Financing Authority received an unmodified opinion indicating the district's financial procedures and controls were implemented in accordance with California Education Code and other appropriate regulations. No material weaknesses or significant deficiencies were identified in relation to internal controls or financial reporting. The authority complied in all material respects with the requirements regarding compliance for the year ending June 30th of 2020. The Indian Kern Schools Financing Authority financials appear as part of the blended component of the SSUSD's annual audit. However, the authority is audited separately. There are no financial implications,
and it's the superintendent's recommendation that the 2019-2020 audit report for the Crsn Schools Financing Authority be accepted as presented.
Move the recommended action.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments, board members? Any questions or comments, members of the public, staff? If not, I will call for the vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Houck?
Aye.
Myself, aye. That makes it unanimous. We will now adjourn the meeting of the Crsn Schools Financing Authority Board of Directors meeting and reconvene the meeting of the Sierra Sands Unified School District Board of Education and move to consent calendar. Did I skip business administration? Oh, Mrs. Smith, you probably want us to go to business administration, don't you?
Just a minor issue.
Mrs. Smith, 11.1, approval of second interim report for the fiscal year 2020 and 2021.
In accordance with California Education Code 42130 and 42131, no later than 45 days after the close of each reporting period, the school district governing board shall approve the interim budget financial report and certify in writing whether or not the school district is able to meet its financial obligations for the remainder of the fiscal year and based on current projections for 2 subsequent fiscal years. School district governing boards are required to certify twice a year the district's ability to meet its financial obligations for the remainder of the year and for the subsequent 2 fiscal years. There are 3 different certifications of financial condition: positive, qualified, or negative. A positive certification indicates that based on current projections, the district will be able to meet its obligations for the current and following 2 fiscal years. This certification is referred to as the interim reports. This is the second interim report that you guys are approving tonight. So the second interim revenues reflect a significant increase over projections at first interim. Highlights to note include the unduplicated pupil percentage. The 2021 certified UPP of 63.25% was used at second interim versus an estimated 55% at first interim. This has increased our LCFF funding. The district anticipates receiving $5.9 million in Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, the CRRSAA ESSER funds. These one-time funds have been included in the second interim restricted revenues. Expenditures reflect no significant changes from projections at first interim. The district continues to project a positive fund balance. It should be noted, though, that this is primarily due to unique variables associated with the pandemic, so we're not expending as much in some areas as we typically would, and the augmentation of one-time CARES Act funding, and that the structural deficit continues in the out years. The multi-year projection reflects the following trends. So the proposed state budget at second interim includes a projected COLA of 3.84% for 21-22, 2.98 for 22-23. If you recall, the start of this budget year, we were looking at a 0 COLA. STR's employer contribution rates decreased by approximately 0.23% in 21-22 and increased by 2.08% in the 22-23 years. PERS rates increased by 2.3 and 3.3 respectively, with step and column increases estimated at 1.5% and the increases in salaries and benefits. Our salary and benefit increases will continue to exceed increases in revenues. Revenues reflect an increasing trend due to the increased COLA, the rolling 3-year average for unduplicated pupil percent, and impacts of the one-time stimulus funds. However, there are still risks to the district's financial stability, including declining enrollment. We're still not sure what our enrollment numbers will look like next year. We're down 260. Loss of pandemic-related ADA hold harmless protection. We've been able to use the ADA that we had in our 1920 school year and carry that forward for the next year. We lose that protection in the 22-23 fiscal year. Costs related to the criteria associated with in-person instruction, we're really not sure what it's going to cost us. Increase in the PERS and STRS rates, reliance on the one-time funds, increased student services requirements, and potential litigation costs due to COVID exposure. Districts have been advised by the county and by the General Financial Services Association to maintain approximately a 17% reserve level. Our reserve levels currently are projected to be 14.15 in 2021, 14.49 in 21-22, and 14.17, 23-24. And I do want to note that if you recall last year at about this time, we were projected to not even be able to meet the 3% for the next 3 years. So much of our ability to have these reserves are due to that augmentation of one-time funding that we've gotten from the legislature. The district is projected to continue deficit spend over the next several years, and while the one-time funds and increases in revenues have mitigated our immediate risk to the district, a continual review of current programs will be necessary. Given our ability to meet the state mandated 3% reserve, we maintain a positive certification. In line with district practice, this report's been formulated in accordance with the guidelines provided by CDE, the FCMAT team, and the Kern County Superintendent of Schools and School Services of California. It's recommended that the board approve the 2021 second interim budget report and positive certification as presented.
Move recommended action.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions by board members? Any questions or comments by staff?
I've got one.
Yes, Mr. Rockwell.
Yeah, I was struck by the unduplicated pupil percentage number. I know we were a little surprised and kind of disappointed at the 55% number that showed up earlier in the year. And now all of a sudden it's up over 63%, which is good. I think that's more in line with what we expected. But how did we get from 55 to 63 in a kind of a crazy year?
So last year, so if you recall 2 years ago, we had a lot of problems with the integrity of the data that had been captured. It was distributed out to the sites. The forms were confusing for families. And so there was a finding in our audit report that we were not consistent in the data. So the year after that, which was last year, we centralized the collection of the data, but we still used forms that had been distributed by the school sites. And in that case, we had a lower return rate than we have this year. And inadvertently, a set of rates was distributed that was 2 years old. And so families that might have qualified based on a current year schedule of what your income needed to be to qualify may not have. And there was just no way for the district to verify that. So this year, we had two changes in our that were positive for us. One was we implemented the Rocket Scan automated data system, which allowed people to input the data online. And secondly, the state gave school districts a waiver this year that allowed our staff to contact families directly if they had not responded to the survey and collect the data ourselves. So we had an incredibly high return rate this year in terms of the survey data, and we had a much higher level of fidelity in terms of the quality of the data that we collected on the user end. And I believe that's what contributed to the increase.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions by board members? Any other questions by staff or community? And then I'll call for the vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Dr. Houck?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Passes unanimously. We go to item 11.2, acceptance of the 2019-20 audit reports for the Crsn's Unified School District.
So in accordance with Ed Codes 35-145 and 41-020, the district is required to conduct an annual audit and report the findings of the SSUSD audit to the board. The audit report has been prepared by the auditing firm of Bailey LLP and has been provided for review. Summary of findings. So there's 3 areas that we get findings. One is federal awards, one's financial statements, and the other is state compliance. And so these are kind of broken out that way. Crsn's received an unmodified opinion in the financial statements and federal award program areas. An unmodified opinion indicates that our fiscal procedures and controls were implemented appropriately in accordance with the California Ed Code and other regulations. A qualified opinion was received in the state compliance program area as it relates to the unduplicated pupil count and the after and before school education and safety program. The qualified opinion relates to the collection, validation, and reporting of the UPP, and I think I talked to that in terms of the problems that we had last year. This audit was for that year. And the attendance reporting in the before school program for late arrival and minimum required hours per week of attendance in this program. A qualified opinion indicates that the financial statements are fairly represented, except for a specific issue, usually due to insufficient evidence to provide a clear picture. The federal awards findings, there were no material weaknesses or significant internal controls deficiencies in the federal awards area. No material weaknesses were identified in relation to the financial statements. However, the district was found to have a significant internal control deficiency in the year-end reconciliation of the cafeteria fund. So typically, our cafeteria fund has maintained a positive balance, and there is a mechanical process by which it's necessary to zero out Fund 13, which is the cafeteria fund, at the end of the year. This year, it was negative. And so there was a transaction that should have been processed to bring it to zero, and we had never been in that situation before and weren't aware of that mechanical issue, so we didn't zero out our Fund 13, but we will do that ever again, that we have a negative balance in Fund 13. No material weaknesses were identified in relation to state compliance. However, as noted above, we did get a qualified opinion because of the two significant internal controls deficiencies. As I mentioned before, we've implemented an automated system for the UPP, and we believe that we will be able to sustain integrity in that process going forward. And the procedures and policies for the before and after school program have been updated, and there's been additional personnel training to ensure proper record keeping. It was noted that the general fund balance, now this is last year, decreased by $2,647,181 over the previous 2 years, and was projected to decrease by 26.5% 2021. That's been mitigated, of course. The district was cautioned to maintain adequate reserves. It was also noted that the district incurred operating deficits in 2 of the previous 3 years and anticipated incurring an operating deficit in 2021. Although not a formal component of the audit report, there were also several observations and recommendations related to the internal controls of the Burroughs High School Associated Student Body Fund. No financial implications, and it is recommended that the 1920 audit report for SSUSD be accepted as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions by board members?
I have a couple.
Yes, Mr. Rockwell.
So first, and this is just sort of a gut feel, but it seemed to me that there were more negative findings this year than in probably many that I can recall. Is that just because Shiloh's just digging deeper than Berkey Cox ever did? Or is there something else there that should be concerning to us?
Shiloh, would you like to answer that?
Sure. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes was the answer to that.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so, we have had different types of findings in each. So we've been your auditors. This is now, I believe this was our 3rd year. And I think in the last couple of years, we have had some findings, but they have changed each year just based on the corrective action, the issues that have been resolved, and so they don't perpetuate. We don't keep seeing the same things. Maybe there's a little bit to be said for by year 3 we have a greater knowledge of the district than we did in year 1, so we have maybe a little bit more ability to dig deeper. But our first year we do dig pretty deep, and I do think we had. Actually, if I can recall correctly, we had quite a bit of federal findings in the first year, and so we've been able to work with the district to clean up a lot of that. And I think we did still have a couple findings last year. So, they change a little bit. I think the one this year with cafeteria was a little bit unique. As your auditor, my only suggestion would be just keeping an eye on the operations of that fund. Why did it go negative? What were the reasons? Obviously, we're dealing with a COVID situation, so a lot of things were unpredictable with respect to the operations in that fund, closing it at the latter half of the year. But yeah, there's been different findings. Maybe there's less this year, but we work hard every year and we do change things up a little bit.
Yeah,
I hope that answers it.
Yeah, thanks for that. I guess the kind of the other question is I heard the word significant, and so they talk about significant deficiencies. Would you note something if it wasn't a significant deficiency? And so is a significant deficiency worse than a just a deficiency, or how's that work?
Yeah, there's 3 different levels. We call just a control deficiency is the lowest level. That means, and oftentimes that's the items we bring up in the back of the report where you saw ASB comments and so on. Things that we say, hey, take a look at these. You've got some control deficiencies, but nothing that we think would rise to the level of maybe that second level, which is now a significant deficiency, something that can really create bigger problems for the district. But the highest level of deficiency we call a material weakness, and that would be something that we believe has the ability to materially misstate your financial statements.
Okay, good. Thank you, Annette. I guess the last, I've got 2 more questions, one for you, Shiloh, and one for Pam. But for Shiloh, a couple of years ago, I remember you mentioned that you thought we could work pretty hard on updating the modernization of our financial systems and some of the automation of some of those things. Have you seen an improvement there?
I think there's been some improvement. I think there's probably still opportunity to integrate more, but I do think that with what you've worked with, the district has taken advice from us in really maybe just collaborating more with different departments to ensure that maybe even some of those manual processes we have, that we're still communicating and ensuring our data is all in sync. I think those were some of our early on issues with discrepancies between departments because we were operating a bit more offline from one another. So there's been improvement in some of that, but I do think there are still some processes that are a bit manual that probably can, fully integrate more if you were able to get all those systems operating within the county system. And I can't remember if the district did end up putting all of their HR functions within the county system. That was one of the areas I recalled where we were really doing that somewhat manually off the county system, and then payroll was picking up within the system. So I think there's been improvement, but I think there are still more improvements that could be made, if I'm just being honest.
I believe she's referring to position control, and I believe we are making every effort to get our position control the driver for how we're managing our salaries rather than a spreadsheet.
Yeah, great. Thanks. That's very helpful. And the last question is, you may have answered it already, Ms. Smith, on the UPP numbers, but I recall that there were issues with UPP in a previous audit report or 2. And so is the fact that there was a finding in this most recent audit report that it was just, the data taken for that audit report was just too early in the process, and we're a lot better now?
Well,
why is that still showing up?
So the UPP that we're looking at now will show up in our 2021 audit report. So this is the one from last year where we still had significant problems in the collection and in the forms that were distributed from the sites to families. There was 2017 data forms distributed at many of our elementary school sites. And so we believe people who would have qualified with the current rate schedule didn't last year because they had the wrong form. And there was no way to recover from that. This year should be better, is my hope. I'm optimistic that at the end of this year's audit, it will look much better with regard to UPP.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll stand down now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Any other questions for board members? Any questions for public or staff? I have a recommended action. We will now call for the vote. Dr. Haug?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson? Aye. Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you, Shiloh.
We will now move to the consent calendar.
Move the consent calendar. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Call for the vote. Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Rockwell?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Dr. Haug?
Aye.
And myself, aye. It is unanimous. Future agenda items?
Mr. Ferris, I'd like to suggest we consider a special board meeting toward the end of this month, as I anticipate there will be a couple of items on which to vote, one of which being a a ratification vote, of course, for the TA I mentioned. And I also believe there are a couple other items, one I think from HR. So I'm suggesting that we consider maybe Thursday, March 25, if calendars look clear.
Is that the date available for board members?
It won't be for me.
Can you zoom in?
Depends on what time it is.
Anybody else have a problem with the date of the 25th? What time are we suggesting?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what the other item is that we could consider. Yeah, we could consider a noontime meeting, frankly.
Would evening be better for you?
No, morning.
Morning would be
Morning
better?
well, actually, evening would be better for me.
Can we do, can everybody do evening?
Okay.
Okay. 6:15 work?
That's for me.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, and that being said, if there are no other recommendations for future agenda item, we will adjourn. The next meeting of the Board of Education, scheduled meeting will be, regular meeting will be 4:15, April 15th, thank you, in these chambers.